Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Devontae, and I sacrifice my time so you don't have to. So, I came across this article, and I don't know. I kind of felt it was a bit interesting, a bit peculiar, if you will. So, check it out. We don't know too much in regards to the process as far as how AEW goes about their training, especially in regards to the talent that they're created from scratch, right? And Jade Cargill gave us a little bit of insight. Not too much details, but enough to at least scratch the surface as to how they carry their young talent. So check it out. Link is down in the description box below if you'd like to follow along. WWE's Jade Cargill is tired of answering questions about AEW, as she'd rather focus on her present and future as opposed to what came before. However, Tony Khan's promotion launched her wrestling career, and her very first match was on an episode of AEW Dynamite. Cargill opened up about the sink or swim experience during an interview with Hot 97, explaining that she was thrown into the deep end without any guidance. And I quote from Jade Cargill, "I didn't really have any direction. I didn't know how a heel was supposed to act. I was just myself," Cargill recalled. The WWE Women's Tag Champion added that she eventually found lots of people who were willing to help her, including CM Punk and Cody Rhodes, who continued to share advice and guidance. Bryan Danielson has also been credited for helping Cargill progress during her AEW run. Cargill's AEW in-ring debut wasn't just any match either, as she was immediately thrust into a high-profile feud involving Rhodes, Red Velvet, and NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal. However, it seems that the company was happy with her performances, as she went on to have a record-setting AEW TBS championship run while also working alongside some helpful veterans. That said, Triple H implied that Cargill wasn't trained properly in AEW before arriving in WWE, which is why her in-ring debut was delayed for several months. Cargill has discussed her appreciation for Punk in the past, noting that he's always provided her with honest feedback. She's also named people who've made her feel comfortable in WWE, including Punk and Rose, as well as top executives like Levesque and Nick Khan. Again, this is from Height 97. If you want to go check out the interview, it's probably somewhere on YouTube, most likely. So again, you can get more into that if you like. But I think this is a little bit interesting. So from what it's been prompted, and it's not as if we haven't discussed this in the past, or at least thought about this in the past as far as AEW and the way it goes about doing their, activities, if you will. Now, if you're not aware, from my understanding, I don't think, someone can correct me in the comment section, I could be wrong about this, but I don't think AEW has a formal training facility like with WCW with the Monster Factory or with WWE with the Performance Center. I don't believe they have a formal training facility. The closest thing you could probably think of is the Nightmare Factory. Now, I'm not sure if Cody is still running the Nightmare Factory or if it's just completely given ownership to like Dustin Rhodes or Goldust, and he's most likely taking care of the primary facilities in regards to training the talent, which is good. Look, Goldust is a veteran at the end of the day. Goldust knows exactly what the fuck he's doing. He ain't called the Natural because that's some type of nickname for him. Dude's approaching 60 years old, and he's doing his thing. You know, Goldust is awesome. I have no problem with Goldust. But it just goes to show you that there's legitimately, outside of him, and I'm not here to say that there aren't certain veterans that are giving the younger talent some advice or anything like that, but it just kinds of go, I don't know, maybe it's just me, right? And there's a bunch of things that you could take away from this article, not just the training in itself, but more things. We'll get to that in a little bit though. But the training in AEW, it just goes to show you that like they don't have any fundamental training. You know what I mean? We talk so much about, oh, well, their in-ring stuff, you know, it's very sloppy. They're very high spot oriented. I'm not even out here to just call them outright, you know, spot monkeys and stuff like that. Yeah, that's a part of it, but they just simply don't have a fucking clue in regards to in-ring psychology at all. Nada, zilch. Even the veterans who are there, outside of a few, you know, one can argue to a lesser degree Bryan Danielson, although I would say that his in-ring psychology has completely plummeted since he's left WWE. I would even argue that Bryan Danielson's in-ring psychology was top-notch in ROH back in the mid-2000s compared to where it is right now in AEW, and I think that has more of a factor into actually having to, I'm not even going to say comply, because I think comply would not be the correct terminology to use, because these are veterans in the end of the day. But I think the more so appropriate word to say would probably be something along the lines of trying to fit in. You know what I mean? This could be touted by guys like Chris Jericho. You could look at guys like Christian Cage for an example. Obviously, the person who just got injured not too long ago, guys like Edge. I think they have now reached a point in their career, and these guys, not to take anything from them, they're all legends. They're some of my favorite wrestlers of all time, Jericho being my favorite wrestler of all time. But it does show you that they themselves, it feels as if sometimes they don't want to assert their dominance. You know what I mean? They don't want to assert their veteranship. And it's not to say overall, obviously, if there's like a locker room leader or people who are trying to instill some kind of common sense as far as decorum is considered, I'm pretty sure a guy like Jericho would step in, or a Bryan Danielson, or an Edge, or something like that, even CM Punk at the time when he was there. But in regards to the product in itself, in regards to like maybe even the storylines in themselves, I almost feel like sometimes that these guys kind of want to instill some type of not just knowledge in itself, but more so not even maturity, I don't think that's the right word to use, but more so like common sense. You know what I mean? Like, I think sometimes you look at how the guys carry themselves currently in the AEW locker room who are legends from a different company like WWE, for an example. They want to be able to go out there and say, hey, maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that, maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that. But then they look up and down the card and they seen everybody doing a bunch of bullshit, and then they think to themselves, well, fuck. In reality, I know the right thing to do. I know what I should do. There's a bunch of things in regards to what I could be doing to slow down most of the roster, let everybody breathe so the audience can actually soak in what they're seeing. Maybe I could talk to Tony Khan, and maybe I can at least, assert some type of privilege, at least what I know knowledge-wise, in regards to telling them, hey, Tony, the way that you're doing the card right now, you're going to burn through a bunch of things really, really quickly, not just simply from a match structure standpoint, as far as doing all these crazy spots for mid-carders who, in the end of the day, have nothing to give to the company in itself, and some of those spots can go to some of the veterans or some of the more important matches being stretched throughout the entire year. Angles develop out of certain spots rather than being used at transitional spots being done for the sake of being done, stupid shit like that. I feel like they want to actually talk up, say something, but they know that right now, currently, they can't really do that, knowing right now that the roster is being run by a bunch of knuckle fucking draghead knuckle dragging fuckheads. There we go. Can't even get my insults right at the moment. My point being is, though, you have that mentality, say, for about 3 or 4 years, and then you just kind of go with the motions and you kind of just do what the other guys are doing on the roster, and then unfortunately, that just becomes the norm. You have Chris Jericho right now, he's got to be like, 53 years old? Actually, he's about to turn 54 in a couple of weeks. He's right now in a position where, in reality, he could be, taking some of his knowledge and making some really, really good matches. You know what I mean? Not too much from the storyline standpoint, but even then, I think people kind of shit on Jericho a little bit too much as far as his creative is considered, but you got to think about it. I don't think he's the only one having to have some kind of input within his creative in itself. My point being is, though, I think having this mentality, and then you have the people who they won't stick up for themselves in regards to how they carry themselves in WWE, not to rock the boat, especially when you're in the ring with a bunch of young talent who are going to go out there in the ring, do all this crazy shit, and then you have to follow it, and then you don't want to stick out like a sore thumb, when in reality, sticking out like a sore thumb could be the best thing that has happened to AEW, because it gives you more time to develop other things outside of the in-ring stuff, and the in-ring stuff that's a priority should be done when it actually matters. Maybe 1 or 2 things happening on a given show, but the majority of the stuff paying off at the pay-per-view, while that 1 or 2 things that are given on the show is just like a bone throw to some of the AEW people out there who are hardcore fans, but the majority of the time you're focusing more on story development and character development. And then when you have this mentality, the training in itself obviously comes back to reflect off of some of these superstars who are coming up in the business. And it's like, you hear Jade Cargill talk, and she's like, fuck, I didn't even know what the fuck a heel was. I would not be surprised if Jade Cargill has any knowledge prior to, obviously, now she's probably a little bit more knowledgeable now, but at the time, I wouldn't be surprised if Jade Cargill had a fucking clue what wrestling was, outside of some of like the more known superstars, like a Rock or an Austin or a Taker or a Savage or a Hogan or an Andre, or Cena or a Batista or a Randy Orton or a Roman Reigns. I highly doubt she was even familiar all too familiar with half the stuff that was going on in professional wrestling. As a matter of fact, I'll even go as far as to say she came into AEW in early 2021, late 2020, early 2021. I am willing to bet my life, given the people who are currently in AEW or currently at the time in AEW, I wouldn't be surprised if the only person in the entire company that she was familiar with at that point in time who worked for the company, because remember, Punk didn't come in yet. He was about to come in a few months later, but he wasn't there yet. I wouldn't be surprised if it was only Jericho. Jericho, maybe Jim Ross, maybe she might recognize Moxley from the Shield. But outside of that, I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't know a goddamn person in AEW outside of those three people, and that's stretching it. You know, you have to educate these people, man. You have to put them into a position where your veteranship pays off from all your years of being in the business. When you have someone like Jade Cargill who is there, who is lost, not knowing what the fuck to do, not knowing who the fuck to talk to, apparently not talking to anyone before she started talking to CM Punk and Cody Rhodes, that's a problem, man. How is your structure? What is your infrastructure in general? Like, who are you? What are you doing? How are you training these people? Are you literally telling them, hey, watch the Young Bucks wrestle and then take some notes and then do what the fuck they're doing? Because what they're doing is everything that's wrong with professional wrestling at the moment. Who are they taking advice from? Apparently, these guys don't care too much about character all too much, not just the Young Bucks, but just the people in AEW in general, even the people who are now, unfortunately, you know, they're now catching the contagion of suckage when it comes to AEW in regards to character growth, and they care more about wrestling now than they ever actually did the fucking storyline purposes of a match in itself. At least the intricacies of character development before you actually go directly into the storyline. Because it's not even to suggest guys like Jon Moxley doesn't have a creative bone in his body. I'm pretty sure Jon Moxley has all the creative in his mind that he wants to do. But when you have not yet specifically made your character a pinpoint as to what is relatable to the audience, or even worse, when it's all over the place and people can't really figure out where you stand, which is the Blackpool Combat Club in general. You can't tell if they're heel, you can't tell when they're face, they keep swapping in and out in regards to character. It doesn't make any sense. You know, you just can't up people and just say one day, hey, we're going to turn you heel because it fits what we need to do with the story currently at the moment. Or one day we need to turn you babyface out of nowhere. Never mind all the things that you did in the past in order to fit this story. Where like Swerve Strickland's a perfect example of that also. You had this guy on a babyface run for how many months as the world champion? And then just out of nowhere, you just kind of turned him pseudo heel during the run with Bryan Danielson and you made him this dangerous? No. It's okay to have a little bit of ambiguity within the character, but it has to be done appropriately. You have to know what you're doing. You have to make sure that even though there's like this cool factor or ambiguity that you want to have in this character, you want to make him a tweener of some kind, you have to make sure and you have to establish that his actions, they may be bad, but the goal in the end of the day has to be good. Stone Cold Steve Austin is a perfect example of that. In all honesty, Stone Cold Steve Austin was a horrible person. When you think about all the actions and all the things that he did, they were despicable. But the person that stood across from him was way more evil in Vince McMahon. And the goal in the end of the day, he might not have wanted to do it as far as an intention, but he did a lot in order to help out the true blue baby faces who came across a Vince McMahon, for an example. Hell, I hate to use another Dragon Ball Z analogy, but look at Vegeta. Vegeta is a perfect example of what an anti-hero is supposed to be. Ambiguity in itself. Look at Vegeta. Vegeta was a character that literally did all the things in the world that one will call as a definition of selfishness. But look what Vegeta did during the Frieza arc. That was his tweener run right there. Vegeta was a fucking heel, to the point that he had his own story arc. All the stuff with Raditz and all that shit, that all built up. Raditz and Nappa, that built up to Vegeta before you started to go to the Frieza arc. And look what happened when they went to Namek. He was still kind of a piece of shit to Gohan and Krillin. And then look what happened towards the end when he actually fought Frieza. You got the goal. He did this because he wanted to avenge the Saiyan race. Because all in all, Frieza fucking exterminated these people. And all the things that he was trying to do was trying to avenge the Saiyans. It was all about his pride. And then eventually you got to the Majin Buu saga when he turned full-blown babyface and he sacrificed himself. Notice ambiguity. That's a true blue fucking tweener. Vegeta is the perfect example of a tweener. And then eventually you got to his full face turn. Whereas with AEW and Swerve Strickland and all these people, you don't know where the fuck they lie. And to even go a little bit further into this point, because this is the second thing that I wanted to talk about, I noticed that the people that Jade Cargill referenced as far as what she wanted to talk to, she went to Cody Rhodes and CM Punk. It's almost as if she went to people who actually had knowledge of the business, who actually knew what they wanted to do as far as a goal intended for the business to stay healthy, an alternative to WWE, but at the same time, they want to make it as professional as humanly possible. It's almost as if she went to people who knew what the fuck to do as far as going through the business, directing themselves through the business, knowing that less is more, knowing that the continuation of an episodic television show is only going to thrive off of what you do. It's like you look at some of these kick streamers, for an example, some of these people who do all these despicable things, you know, like what's the guy's name? Jack Doherty. I just seen the video not too long ago of him in his stupid ass car accident texting on his phone. Or that other guy, what's his name? Neon or some shit. That douchebag right there. All these people, Sneeko, all these motherfuckers, bro. They do all these antics, but in reality, no one's legitimately relating to you as a person. If anything, you're making everybody hate you. But for the most part, no one necessarily cares about you. No one comes to watch you. They come to see your antics. That's AEW in a nutshell. No one cares or relates to the characters that they have on television. It's what's the stupid shit that they're going to do in their match next, right? What flip or dive are they going to do? No one relates to the characters. And when no one relates to the character and all that you have is the actions within themselves, you can't sit back and wonder, why the fuck are people not watching the show? You're not giving them a reason to watch the show. No one's relating to your character. And mind you, this is not to say that the things that I'm talking about aren't being done in WWE, but I'd be hard pressed to say from a ratio standpoint that WWE doesn't have more characters that people relate to more so than AEW. You'd be sitting there scratching your head trying to figure out that number when figuring out what the fuck or who the fuck people care about in AEW. Honestly, off the top of my dome, I can't even say MJF because people don't even really, he was getting to that point before you pull the rug underneath him and then you swapped him babyface, made him a goofball, and then turned him back heel when you realize how fucking stupid that was. He's probably the closest one currently at the moment as far as the talent you have right now. But you have no one who's easily relatable. That's probably why Cody Rhodes and CM Punk left. It's not just the stuff that were going on from a personal standpoint. The personal standpoint in itself is relating off of the dumb dick decisions being done in AEW from the EVPs, from the wrestlers who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. You got people like Hangman Adam Page saying he's not going to take any advice from any veterans. This is the kind of shit that hurts your company overall. This is the destruction of your wrestling company. When you have no one to relate to, then why the fuck are you watching? And this is why I try to explain all the time when I talk about story and character. Your reference to story is based off only the actions that are happening in the ring, which is not a bad thing. But what coincides with that as far as a buildup or a reason to want to watch the actions being done in the ring? And half the time when it comes to the actions being done in the ring, there's no story there too. The story it's not even a story. I don't even know what to call it. It's not a story. It's just acrobatics. That's all it's done, and it's just acrobatics. Who in their right mind can watch something like that over and over again? It's an old reference I used to say all the time. But if you want to watch 2 hours of compilations of guys going out there and just doing stunt double shits, then my God, go watch a Bruce Lee film. Go do that. Watch a Bruce Lee film. You'll get more excitement out of that, legitimately getting the same type of thing you would want out of a wrestling program. But that's all I had to say, man. That's all I wanted to discuss. I just found it very peculiar that now we have people like Jade Cargill pretty much confirming what we already knew, but just to go a little bit more in depth into the situation, because I feel like the AEW fanboys out there who get so upset at people who constantly criticize the stuff that they like, I don't think they understand what they're talking about whenever they're referencing storylines, whenever they have some type of, some type of position that they would like to defend, whenever people bring up the lack of story. Your looseness of actually describing a story in relation to what everybody else is talking about in professional wrestling is about as loose as people who use the word racism. It's like you can't take discrimination, which is what racism is, and then use it as a generalized term to describe racism. Yes, racism is discriminatory, but there's an underlining factor. Discrimination is the definition. That's the broad, that's the genre. Racism is the subgenre. Now you have to describe the subgenre. It's like grunge and it's like rap music. They're both music, but they both have their own distinct properties. That's racism underneath discrimination. It's discrimination, but what kind of discrimination? You can't use racism in place of discrimination like you can't use rock music as an encompassing for music in general. You can't use story in order to encompass what an angle is, what's actually being done to promote the match, what's being done in the match in itself, what's the post-match stuff. You can't do all of that and then try to proclaim all the things that are lacking within that doesn't constitute what would be an actual story, and then try to actually constitute it as an actual story. It doesn't work that way. And it's nice to see people who struggled in AEW, which we all knew on the offset. We all knew the problems that were going on backstage with the young talent who didn't know or have any guidance legitimately. It's nice to hear them say their piece and talk about their side of the story and give us a little bit of insight as regarding how they had to guide through the ways of AEW in order to get to the position that they're currently at right now. And it's only going to happen more and more, man. The enabling of this behavior, man, it only stops when everybody else stops giving Tony Khan all this unwarranted compliments, telling him that he's doing a good job. Don't confuse giving wrestlers jobs and, giving them positions within the company or having an alternative business for wrestlers to have work outside of WWE. Those are all good things. And I applaud Tony Khan for that. That's a great thing. He's giving more work. But him doing all of that has nothing to do with the actual booking. Because what good is all of what he's doing currently at the moment if you go out of your way to destroy your own business and then eventually those workers now have no jobs? Because your decision making on behalf of the booking put your company into a position where, we don't have a business for anyone to work at. But that's just my piece. I'll let you guys discuss this down in the comment section below. I will be back during the SmackDown review. All right. So with that being said, my name is Devontae, and I'll be catching you guys later. A deuces and a pea ice.